Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to the DM's Guild review, my written and video review series. Take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. This video will be reviewing the monster booklet 10 Monsters of Midsummer, designed by Lucas Anderson with Bum Lee, Daniel King, Jack Weighill, Jonathan Swadley, Sharkside, Aaryan, Balu, and Sebastian for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. This review has been sponsored by the publisher, and a review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you are interested in a sponsored review, please reach out via email, Twitter, or Discord, or my submission form at roguewatson.com. If you enjoy my content, consider using my affiliate links for your online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/roguewatson. So I previously reviewed this creative team's monster booklets with 12 Christmas sleighs in December, and they have also been busy through 2021 with, I believe, one that was centered on Valentine's Day in February and April Fool's Day in April. But this is the first one that I have looked at since the Christmas one, which I really liked. It's a booklet that is obviously uses monsters from that season, and it's very tongue-in-cheek, it's very funny, but it's still, the effort is to create well-balanced, interesting stat blocks based on those, you know, pretty kind of obvious, fun ideas that you would use, like Jack Frost and Santa and reindeers and all that kind of thing. Summer is not as strong a theme as the Christmas holiday season is. I think they do a pretty good job nailing certain aspects of summer. It's not all just July 4th, you know, stuff, but although the fireworks and the golem are probably my favorite. But overall, I don't think the theming is quite as strong. I still think they do a really good job with the monsters, for the most part, the ones they use, and giving them interesting stat blocks, and really giving us a pretty wide variety. Even though there's only 10 monsters here, we've got everything, in fact, it lists it right here on the opening page, from a CR half up to a CR 23, which is pretty cool. So basically everything from tier 1 to tier 4. But the idea here is, you know, monsters based on things that we associate with summer, and for each of these we're giving a piece of art, a description, a full stat block, and 3 adventure hooks, which I really love that this team still produces adventure hooks for all of their monsters. That's something I would like to see more monster books do, although obviously the bigger the monster book, usually the less time and detail you can put on any one specific monster. And I like the fact that these are shorter, you know, in terms of fewer entries, but each entry feels like more effort has been done to produce each one and really dig into the details, give me a really fun description, and give me some really fun adventure hooks. For example, the giant cicada, one of the adventure hooks is that obviously these cicadas have just emerged from, you know, their sleep, because that's what they do. They spend a decade or two underground, like buried, and they emerge, and it's just a cacophony of horrible noises everywhere, which, by the way, if you haven't heard it, it sounds crazy. I'm used to it where I live, but it's just loud, like almost sounds like a bird type. It's like a cricket, you know, song, like amplified by just a huge amount, which is reflected in the stat block, which is pretty fun. But in the adventure hooks, obviously this can cause just a huge environmental hazard problem, as nobody can get to sleep and it's just a huge amount of noise. That's one hook. Another one is that the cicadas appear, and they appear to be controlled by some kind of other entity, some kind of alien intelligence. So in this case, in the adventure hook 2, maybe they're minions of a bigger threat. And then Adventure Hook 3, you stumble upon a lone injured cicada, unable to find a mate. Can you help that cicada? So in Adventure Hook 3, you turn this creature into a quest-giving, like, NPC that you can help. So these aren't all just, you know, versions of the same thing where, like, oh, you have to deal with this monster threat. They really do a pretty good job of creating, you know, what if you had to help one, and what if they were minions, and what if they were just an environmental hazard. I thought this was one of the better examples of how to make a cool variety of adventure hooks for these different monsters. Giant Cicada does have his cool stat block where everybody within 300 feet must make a DC 12 Wisdom save, but they can't even sleep. They don't even really have a normal attack. My favorite ones are the Barbecue Golem and the Living Fireworks. The Barbecue Golem, which is a hilarious looking design, which looks like a combination of a propane and charcoal grill, and I love the spatula skewer arms and things. The stat block is really, so I mean, it's a goofy monster, right? Like you can use it as like a stationary, you know, grill that comes to life, or something that's like roaming around town, has obviously gone, you know, berserk after somebody invented it or created it, or whatever backstory you want, and those are kind of included in the adventure hooks. But the stat block does a funny thing. Take a seat champ, where it can knock people prone, taste the charcoal. Anybody that's grappled by the golem is actually stuffed inside of the grill part of its chest, and they take continuous damage. I really like that as reactions. Reactions, by the way, I would love to see on more monsters, because that helps the action economy for the DM a little bit more without necessarily having to give them legendary actions, which is how you create better boss monster encounters. But, you still only have the one reaction, but at least it lets you do something interesting on the enemy's turn, because assuming you're running it as a combat encounter, then you're going to be getting hit. In this case, whenever you're hit by a melee weapon, you can belch flaming gas back at the attacker, which deals fire damage, or it can summon bears and wolves, and the reaction is called "You smell like meat," because they're just attracted by the smell of delicious grilled meats, which I think is pretty funny. And that's really what these are in a nutshell. Like, they take this goofy idea for a monster, theme it towards whatever they're producing, and then try to create abilities that are purely based on the kind of funny things it would do, but also feel like they are appropriately, decently balanced for whatever, this one's a CR6, so kind of early tier 2. But that all feels really interesting, and I appreciate that they were given some more interesting abilities for a lot of these. LAETERYS, the Rainbow Dragon. I was embarrassingly far into this creature's description before I realized it was a reference to pride and LGBTQ+. The whole time I'm thinking, okay, rainbows, I guess rainbows are summery. I just didn't freaking get it. It's even called the Transcendent. They are referred to as they pronouns. And then it really peels back all veneer of trying to cleverly mask what it is. And then Adventure Hooks is straight up like, LAETERYS ask you to help protect their freedom and the queer community they have built. Or LAETERYS is LAETERYS, I don't think I'm pronouncing it correctly, is hosting their annual pride party, and there are noise complaints from the villagers near the mountain. When you reach the mountain community, you see it is full of all kinds of well-meaning, peaceful creatures. I mean, it is appropriate. Like, obviously, Pride is in June, so that is a summer thing. It doesn't feel like it's cleverly produced in an interesting way in terms of you just kind of made a rainbow dragon. I will say the stat block is fun in that it doesn't just do the obvious thing, which is it breathes out color spray, which I thought it would do because it's rainbow colors. Instead, it breathes out a prismatic breath that you have to roll a D8 or a D6 or D4, depending on they've got all the different dragon from Wormling up to Ancient. And then that determines what kind of damage it does. So it could be, shock damage or freezing damage or even psychic damage, or it could do something else entirely like paralyze or petrify or something. It's almost like a beholder ray in terms of what the spray can do. So that's actually pretty cool. It's stunning when it's in sunlight. Everybody has to, instead of having the terrifying presence, it can just stun you with its blindingness. So it's got a really cool stat block that probably reflects what you would see at Pride, because the bedazzling and the blinding and doing all these different rainbow attacks and things. I think it works. I'm not a fan of the art though, and in fact I don't know if we changed artists between some of these products, because I actually liked the art in the Christmas book, but in this one a lot of them have this kind of washed out painted look. Like, this doesn't look like a rainbow at all to me. I don't know. So it doesn't, I don't know, the art doesn't really work for me quite as much. This one kind of has the same art scheme. The barbecue golem looked fine, but a lot of these, it doesn't. I don't know if it's maybe part of the background art that's being used or what, but whereas I liked the art in the other one, this one, I'm not putting it as a con or anything, and art's very subjective, and we do get art for all the different creatures, but I personally did not like the art as much as the previous seasonal book that I reviewed. Living Firework is my other favorite one because obviously it's a really fun idea. Of course, fireworks are a big part of summer, specifically the 4th of July for the American holiday. And it's got a really cool stat block where it literally can enter people's spaces and automatically dealing damage. I guess they have to roll a dex save, but it just deals damage by being in somebody's space because it's all thunder and radiant damage. It's blinding and blasts and things. In addition to being able to shoot off all of its different fireworks as range attacks, it takes damage every turn, which is interesting because it's technically shooting off parts of itself. And finally, when it goes down to 0 hit points, it explodes, dealing basically dealing its attack that it does in explosive form, where it enters people's spaces. So really interesting idea for a elemental that's just a pain in the ass and constantly dealing damage, even dealing damage to itself. And I think that was a really fun idea of using a summer creature in and manifesting it as a stat block. That one and the barbecue golem are probably the best examples. Midsummer Queen might be the worst example. You know, and this is not anything to do with the Midsummer like Swedish cult or anything, but this is just kind of a super dryad where they're a plant person. They basically just have a lot of druid spells, and in terms of their actions and legendary actions, none of it's very interesting other than they can make like thorns kind of grapple or restrain you, and then they can heal from that move, and that's about it, and it's not terribly interesting. The Sandcastle Crab is probably my third favorite. I love crabs in general. I have hermit crabs and marine in a saltwater tank with a marine crab in there. I just think crabs are neato. And this is really based on the decorator crab, I think, which is they can build, you know, put things, and kind of looks like similar to a Pokemon also, where they put like different objects on the back of their shell. It's got layer actions and legendary actions. That's a CR 10 and speaks common. So it also kind of reminds me of the crab from Tamatoa from Moana. So really neat idea. I like the sandcastle thing. It can sculpt earth, and it's got, you know, erupting earth and transmute rock, move earth, wall of water, wall of sand. Just a lot of really appropriate spells, and seems like a really fun idea for a creature. And I like that it's got all these layer actions and regional effects. So it's obviously beach. There's sandcastles everywhere. There's crabs everywhere. You can just cast erupting earth on initiative 20. And a lot of the adventure hooks are either people trying to get rid of the crab, or the crab is like hiring you to like help like destroy a lighthouse because it's in its way. Just, you know, a fun idea for a creature that's a actually sentient, like big, powerful creature, which is interesting. On the other hand, you have a sentient pirate ship, which is really goofy, and this one didn't quite work for me as much. Mainly because I don't think pirates are necessarily summer, although I guess we can think of it that way just because water, ocean. The ship itself is alive, however. It's a living construct, which means its stat block is all of its cannons and ballista shots, which the interesting thing there is it's got certain amounts of ones that it can do, like 3 on each side or something, and then it has to load them if they're currently unloaded. So it has to do this weird, like, some of its attacks can fire, and then some of its attacks have to be reloading, so it's a little bit extra work for the DM to keep track of. I do like that as a bonus action, it can just insult people by essentially giving it a higher powered vicious mockery as a bonus action, which is interesting. It can also summon a skeleton crew, but I can't imagine that crew actually does anything if it's firing, you know, at people on another ship or on land or something. And then obviously if they're on the ship, then the skeleton crew is the only thing dealing anything, because the ship's not doing anything. It's kind of a weird idea I can't quite wrap my head around. And I'm not sure, to me, it necessarily fits the summer theme as much. I mean, pirates, again, I guess, can be summer themed, but to me, pirates is kind of its own theme almost. But it's still an interesting stat block. I did laugh out loud when I saw the sun as a monster. So I live in Texas, and right now in, late July, we are in straight up 100 degrees. For probably the next like 2 or 3 weeks. And I don't mean feel like 100 degrees. I mean the temperature gauges literally reads 101, 102, and it feels like 106, 107. Very, very hot. And the sun is absolutely a dastardly enemy. And I feel CR23 probably an appropriate way to go about that. It's actually not the most interesting stat block or creature. I don't know why it looks like kind of a curved up armadillo, to use another Texas reference. Basically, it's got a bunch of, obviously, radiant spells, sunbeam, sunburst, wall of fire, legendary actions, where it can essentially do a bunch of sun stuff and explode and blind you. It all seems pretty, kind of obvious action-wise. I don't know, CR23 doesn't seem like its actions are powerful enough, even though it can cast all these spells and has legendary actions. It doesn't have any multi-attacks or anything, so it's just doing basically one high-powered sunbeam attack, or just casting sunbeam, or it could technically heal, which you're probably going to want some minions with it or something. I'm trying to wrap my head around how to use the sun as a monster. Maybe this is when I start needing like more information about these things. I need like whole dungeons and minions and all these things, which is outside the scope of this book. SUNDAE OOZE is a really great idea. It's not the most interesting stat block because oozes are all kind of the same, and this one is straight, very similar to a gelatinous cube where it can roll over people and suck them up and deal damage. It's just really funny and a fun idea. I like the abilities are called Single Scoop and Hot Fudge, where it can do fire damage with Hot Fudge. And the adventure hooks can be a lot of fun. Like you get told to go, basically they're throwing a feast. You need to harvest some dessert for us by getting some from the SUNDAE OOZE. There's a boardwalk being terrorized, and there's of course bits of sprinkled and like melted ice cream. You're trying to figure out what's going on. Or one of them is just this wizard appears and says, "Ice cream, you scream, I'll scream for ice cream," and then this basically unleashes this SUNDAE ooze on you. Adventure hooks are very fun, and for the most part, really worked for me, and I did enjoy them. Even if not all of the monsters necessarily worked for me this time like they did in the Christmas one. And I'm just trying to spitball, like, what are other like thematic summary ones that I would have maybe seen or would have replaced with some of these, like maybe some kind of monstrous hot dog, or some way of doing sunscreen as a monster, like a ghost that was just a sunscreen creature somehow. I would have loved to see more beach themed creatures like that sandcastle crab, something to do with like shells, or just ocean, saltwater, maybe pool, like a chlorine creature, or algae, maybe something to do with like boating. I don't know, the galleon doesn't really necessarily do it for that, but like some kind of I don't know, something. I feel like there were a few better fits than we would have gotten here, whereas again the Christmas theme I think was very solid and all the creatures were perfect here. This one maybe not quite as much, even though I still like the format a lot. I like the idea of these seasonal creatures. Some of them are really, really great, like the living firework and the barbecue golem are just, I could build entire like one-shot summary themed adventures out of these creatures because they're really interesting stat blocks. They're really fun ideas, and they reflect really well upon how to adapt that concept into a monster, whereas others not quite as interesting. The volcano spirit, the galleon ship, SUNDAE ooze is cute, maybe not the most interesting stat block. Midsummer queen, a little boring. The rainbow dragon is pretty cool. Actually, I just wish I guess I wish I had better art for it, as it just doesn't look that interesting from the art standpoint. So overall, I'm gonna give it a big thumbs up. But if you're looking for maybe a stronger seasonal book, I would probably recommend the Christmas one first. But obviously, if you are in the summer and you want to run a summer adventure with funny summer creatures, this one is still going to be a good option. So let's go over my pros and cons. Pro: several creative, funny monster ideas with interesting and highly thematic actions and abilities. Even though not all of them I was on board with, there were enough of them where it is a definite thumbs up, and they do a really fun job of implementing those summer ideas. And pro: variety of fun adventure hooks for each monster, something that this creative team does very, very well, and something that would be lacking in a lot of other monster books is, how do I implement these creatures? What are some ideas that I could use to give as quests, or are they enemies? Are they helpful allies? How do we come across them? Do we get another quest to go deal with this monster? Do we just happen upon them? Where should we happen upon them? All these things. They're not big, complicated, huge adventures, but that's not what I necessarily need. Just ideas, and that's exactly what they do here. I did include a con here, which is that I just don't feel like it's as strongly themed as other seasonal monster books. I don't know if that's a problem with summer or a problem with this book in general, but I kind of spitballed some ideas earlier that maybe would have been fun additions to have, and maybe I would have replaced with some of the weaker options that would have really helped sell that kind of summer party theme a little bit better, rather than just, I don't know, the stat blocks that just weren't quite as interesting or fun to me. Final verdict: though not as thematically fun as the publisher's other holiday monster books, 10 Monsters of Midsummer includes more creative and interesting new foes for summertime adventures. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel. You can support my work at patreon.com/roguewatson. Thank you.